heard that if you use leftover royal icing from your freezer, you have to freshen up the icing with a bit of newly made icing or it won't work right? I have. And for a while, it kind of stressed me out. I mean, if you have to make new icing every time you want to ice your cookies, you would end up with so much extra white icing, you wouldn't know what to do with it. So today, I'm going to prepare for my pink princess cookie using only leftover icing, and then I'll show you how I decorate it and the final result. Honestly, I don't know where I first heard that you have to freshen up your icing, but I know I've heard it more than once. And if you're anything like me, not knowing something like this when you're brand new to working with royal icing is complete torture. And most of us don't have anyone to ask. I know I didn't. But let me put your mind at ease. I have found it to be unnecessary to add new icing to leftover icing from the freezer. One thing you do need to do is remove the icing from the piping bag and mix it up, especially with more saturated colors. The colors tend to settle down at the pressure point on the underside of your bag like you see here. If the consistency seems about right, you can just go ahead and bag it up like I did here. I needed two different pinks, a lighter and a darker for my princess dress. This icing, the lighter one, is supposed to be a soft peak piping consistency. I am still trying to lock down my consistencies. If you have seen any of my decorating videos, you know the adventure it has been. Once the icing is in the bag, I spin the bag around to help the icing move down to the tip while simultaneously removing air bubbles from the icing. Then I tie it up to ensure the icing doesn't make its way out of the bag without my permission. Yes, I have made this mistake. Oh, the joys of doing something new. Oh, cameraman, you are a nut. Now, on to my second icing. My freezer was getting pretty overrun with leftover icing, so I wanted to use up as much of it as I could. I used all leftover icing for all 6 colors I made in my Sweet Summer decorating series. Since I also needed a darker pink, I pulled out my Chef Master Super Red gel color to darken up my icing. Sometimes I use a toothpick to add only a tiny bit of color, but I felt confident I could get a couple of drops to do the job today. After a bit of mixing, I realized 2 things. 1, that I didn't have enough icing in my bowl, and 2, that it was a little darker than the color I had in my head. So I grabbed some of my white icing. I much prefer mixing the icing from the freezer because it is way less time consuming. A quick check here tells me I'm not quite there yet. Side note, I do let the icing come fully to room temperature before working with it. It really only takes a few minutes because even though you have had it in the freezer, it doesn't actually harden. Though I do notice the more water that is in the icing, the harder it freezes, which probably makes perfect sense. Now I test the consistency with my spatula. This is going to be used to flood the base layer on my cookie. It's not quite thin enough, so I added a little water in with my dropper and mixed a little more. Another quick test? Nope, still not there. I'm looking to see the icing ribbon off smoothly into the bowl. I want it to settle within about 15 seconds, I think. I can tell you that by far the most difficult thing about decorating sugar cookies, getting the icing to the right consistency. I think this is the right consistency. See how nice and smooth that ribbon is? There's no glopping, which means it should settle nicely when I go to decorate my cookie. To get the icing into the piping bag, it is definitely the easiest and cleanest to first put the bag into a tall glass. I always use this little glass bowl to mix my colors. It's large enough to allow me to mix comfortably, and it is small enough to fit into my hand, which is really nice because I have really little hands. I find the look of this so soothing. We shall see if it is soothing to work with. I always take the time to wipe off any little globs of icing that get onto the top edge of the bag. Any icing that ends up above your knot can wreak havoc on your decorating day after it dries out. Little bits of dry icing end up everywhere. Ask me how I know that one. Also notice I twist the top of the bag before I knot it. This just helps me to actually tie the knot. then a quick tug or two, and we are secure. I added this little rubber tie band just to allow me at a fast glance to identify which bag is my flood icing. You can use these to tie up your bag, but I find it best practice to just tie the bag. I also like to cut off the excess bag above my knot. It probably does nothing but to make me feel more organized. I used this little edible marker to mark out where I needed to place my icing. You can use any color, this one just happened to be pink. Just be sure to stay away from the edge of your cookie so you don't run the risk of not being able to cover up the marker. If you are confident in your skill and your icing consistency, you can flood all the way to the edge of the cookie. I am neither confident in my skill or my consistency, so I opted to place my outline a little in from the edge. I am using what is called a one consistency outline and flood, which just means that I am using the same icing to do the work of the outline as well as the flooding. I do not let my outlines dry before filling in with the flood icing for a couple of reasons. I prefer the sleek look of the flood icing melting into the outline, and if I need to use my scribe to help settle the icing, I don't run the risk of picking up any dry bits into my wet icing. Believe me, it is not pretty. I will be completing the decorating of this cookie in multiple stages, so that is why you see that I separated my applications of icing. When I allow my icing to dry a bit before applying more next to it, a little line of separation is achieved, helping to give the illusion of pleats or ruffles in the bottom portion of the dress and the look of a seam from the skirt to the bodice. This is my very first attempt at making this princess dress cookie. I was asked if I would make some cookies for a little girl's birthday in a couple months. Since I'm still so new at this, 1, this terrifies me, and 2, I need to practice. I will say that I absolutely love this pink color. It kind of reminds me of Kuny's Cookies pink. Funny thing though, I'm typically not a huge fan of pink. My favorite colors are blue and green. Not blue or green, blue and green. Together. The brighter, the better. 15 minutes in my dehydrator set at 95 degrees allows me to now finish the flooding of this cookie. You may be able to tell that the icing isn't quite as shiny, but don't be fooled. Only the very top layer of this icing is dry, what is called crusted over. It'll take about 24 hours for the cookie to fully dry. Now, for some strange reason, I failed to capture the last bit of decorating I did on this cookie. I used my lighter icing to attempt to make some enhancements to the plain flood. My original plan was to place a top outline. I should have stuck with that. Instead, I treated it like a flood icing, and it was way too thick to do that. So, to cover up my boo-boos, I added sprinkles and these cute little pearls. I'm not thrilled with the final outcome, except that it was very tasty.
Next time on Kuny's Cookie Chronicles.
Kuny's Cookies has been on YouTube now for 4 months, and we are back with our second update on how our journey has gone so far, and today I share with you the top 7 things I've learned since starting my YouTube channel.